Welcome to the Bahamas, where paradise meets opportunity. Hello everyone, my name is Mack Altidor and welcome to Keys to the Bahamas, your guide to investing in real estate here in the Bahamas. In today's episode, we're diving into some of the essential legal aspects of purchasing real estate here in the Bahamas. With me today is a highly respected real estate lawyer, Mr. Darron Pickstock.
Thank you for having me. Again, my name is Darron Pickstock. I'm a real estate attorney in the Bahamas with the law firm of Glinton, Sweeting, O'Brien, and I possess over 16 years of real estate experience in the Bahamas.
Here at Keys to the Bahamas, our goal is to equip our potential buyers with the essential steps of everything that they need to make a purchase here in the Bahamas. Let's dive into the first question. So Darron, for international buyers interested in purchasing property here in the Bahamas, what are some of the most important legal steps that they need to take?
Well, some of the legal steps or important legal steps that buyers need to know when purchasing in the Bahamas is firstly, they need to engage a local attorney. So Bahamian law requires a buyer or an international buyer to use a local attorney when purchasing property in the Bahamas to ensure that all of the requirements are met. When I say engage a local attorney, I mean engage a local competent attorney. And so that would be the first step I would advise any international buyers to consider when purchasing real estate in the Bahamas. Another important legal step when purchasing property in the Bahamas is to ensure that your attorney, your competent attorney, does a title search on the property that you are considering purchasing. A thorough title search is extremely important when purchasing property in the Bahamas to ensure that there are no liens or any encumbrances on that property when purchasing. Another important step when purchasing property in the Bahamas is to ensure that the agreement for sale or your purchase and sale agreement outlines the terms and the conditions to which you want in the property purchase, and it speaks exactly to what should happen in the property purchase. Therefore, the agreement for sale sets out all of the relevant terms to which you're going to purchase that property in the Bahamas. Another legal step when purchasing in the Bahamas is to ensure that your property purchase is registered with the Bahamas Investment Authority. What that means, if you are purchasing property in the Bahamas for investment purposes, you are required to obtain a permit from the Bahamas Investment Authority. That process has to be done before the transaction closes. If you are purchasing in the Bahamas for owner-occupied purposes, then you are required to obtain a certificate of registration. That process is done after the transaction is closed. One of the final stages when purchasing real estate in the Bahamas is paying for that real estate and closing. So once all conditions are met in the sales agreement, the final payment is required, and ownership is then transferred from the seller to the buyer, and at the closing of that transaction, you receive a certificate of registration from the Bahamas Investment Authority. After paying for the property transfer, after receiving your transfer document, the transaction is considered to be closed. We then move into the post-closing process of the entire transaction. This is where you pay your value-added tax. It is important to know that buyers must pay value-added tax based on the property value. This VAT tax is typically shared.
Once you've purchased property in the Bahamas, does that qualify you to become a permanent resident in the Bahamas?
Well, that's a good question. So once you've purchased property in the Bahamas, property purchases above a certain threshold may qualify a buyer to apply for economic permanent residency in the Bahamas, which may have certain benefits, and particularly for tax purposes. However, I always advise my clients to seek legal advice from their tax attorneys in their respective jurisdictions.
So tell me, what are some of the common misconceptions that buyers have when purchasing property here in the Bahamas?
In the Bahamas, some of the common misconceptions are that buyers sometimes think that laws in their jurisdiction are identical to the laws in the Bahamas. And this is a common misconception that can lead to many unintended consequences. And so that is why it's important to ensure that you have a competent attorney who can convey that the laws in their jurisdiction will more than likely be different from the laws in the Bahamas. Another common misconception that international buyers have is that there are no taxes on property transactions in the Bahamas. So while the Bahamas has no capital gains or no inheritance taxes, buyers must still pay VAT on property purchases in the Bahamas, and that is subject to the value of the property.
So Darron, what would you consider to be a number one piece of advice when a purchaser is considering making a purchase in the Bahamas?
Well, Mack, my number one piece of advice to a purchaser considering purchasing property in the Bahamas is to get a competent attorney. I cannot stress that enough. Get a competent attorney. This will save you time and this will save you money. Another critical advice I would advise any purchaser purchasing in the Bahamas is to find yourself a competent realtor.
That is invaluable advice. Thank you, Darron, for sharing these insights.
It was a pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.